Hello and welcome to the Parents' Guide. This is where you'll find out what's going on in schools and hear some of the key issues being discussed from the parents' point of view. If you have school-aged children, this programme is for you. We'll be focusing on science in secondary schools with two parents, Paul Stockwell and Catherine Kokazu.
Hello.
Hello.
We're also joined by education consultant Christine Ryan, who has a great deal of experience in secondary schools.
Hello.
We've been looking at some programmes from Teachers TV and we'll be showing some extracts during our discussion. These programmes were made for teachers, but they also open up a window for parents to look into classrooms and see what's going on in schools today. In the first clip, we're going to St James's Catholic High School in North London, where Richard King and his Year 7 class are looking at forces.
Right, I want to put it on this chair. Do you think it's going to be alright on this chair?
Yeah, put it on.
If I put it on a bit like
Put it on properly.
that.
No.
Is it going to fall off?
Yes.
Do you think it's going to fall off?
Yes.
What's going on? Can anyone explain that to me, please? Holly?
The air resistance is acting upon the box and then
Right.
acting in the air.
Right, you've got some good ideas there. You're thinking about air resistance, which is important, but don't forget air resistance only happens when something is moving. It's not moving. I tell you what, there might be something in the box which could help us. Maybe it's that. Is that what's keeping the box up?
No.
Why not? It's a helium balloon. It's pulling upwards. Is that strong enough to lift our box up?
No.
So what must it be then? Fernanda, what do you think?
There's something really, really heavy pushing down on the chair, so the box will stay up.
There's something heavy pushing down on the chair. If I turn the chair around like this, it doesn't look like the box should stay up, should it? No. Where do you think that heavy object is? You lot are geniuses.
Catherine, does that remind you of your science lessons at school?
Unfortunately not. That looked really exciting, and it was nice the way they got the whole group involved and they were all able to guess what they thought it was, and yet they weren't put down when they got the wrong answer. They were just encouraged to give more suggestions, and eventually they sort of whittled it down. But I thought that was a really exciting way of teaching forces.
Do you agree with that, Paul?
Yes, I think that clip was excellent. That's demonstrating enthusiasm, and it's all about enthusiasm and commitment.
Are you concerned, though, that there seems to be a sort of lower take-up now in terms of taking subjects like physics to a higher level?
Yes. I mean, when we look at UK Limited, we need science and we need engineering. We need people who create wealth, and that's what we're losing by losing scientists.
And is there a problem with physics in particular? We read that quite a lot in the papers, don't we?
Yes, certainly. I mean, the numbers of students pursuing physics even to A level is down again, and it is a national problem that we face for all the sciences and physics, chemistry in particular.
What about girls in particular, though? Because that's the one subject that in secondary school girls seem to switch off more quickly than boys, possibly.
Yes, actually they do well at science. There's very little difference in terms of how they perform in exams between boys and girls. But not so many of them take it on beyond GCSE.
What about parents, though? Do you think for some parents the language of science, the vocabulary, is so complicated at secondary level that they can't really support their children?
No, I don't think so. I think there could be some activities that could be done at home with normal everyday household objects, perhaps as worksheets or homework or whatever, to get parents perhaps more involved with science and maybe do a little more practical work.
Catherine, would you feel confident doing science at home with your children?
I think the biggest science experiment is probably letting my daughter loose in the kitchen. But that is practical science, you know, whether it's cooking and baking. It's so, whereas we might not know, you know, the technical terms for everything that's going on, it is all good practical experience. But now I'm afraid I'm not au fait with, you know, the correct terminology, but you can get so many science experiments that you can pick up in shops these days for children, and I think it's that's a way of perhaps getting parents involved. As you say, practice doing them at home.
OK, well, next we're going to an unusual school, Redbourne Upper School in Bedfordshire, where they have their own farm. This gives students all kinds of experiences and learning opportunities, not just in science, but across the curriculum.
We get students that have opted to use the farm and come here on regular lessons. We have art students who come down and use our animals for sketching practice, and they find out that the animals don't necessarily stand still when they want to sketch them. We have also number and maths department have come in and used with some of those who like to get practical data capture, and then that comes into science too, where the students actually take the recordings and then take them away and make their graphs and interpret graphs from it.
My name is Andy Hodds. I'm a teacher of science at Redbourne Upper School. Just bring the children down here on the farm and they can actually see biology in action. It helps cement ideas, the smells, the sights, the sounds. I mean, a lot of them don't have an appreciation of these animals, don't appreciate how big they are, don't appreciate the amount of work that actually goes into looking after these animals. In some students, it's actually given an appreciation of the food cycle as well, that they don't take things for granted. The meat isn't just a pink thing on a slab in Tesco's.
Paul, do you think that kind of practical hands-on learning could help a child's self-esteem?
Yes, I mean, it's inspirational, isn't it? It's why can't we have one of those? I think there is a lot to that. Why can't schools have a veggie plot and sell the produce as a business and enterprise scheme? It's opened my eyes anyway.
Catherine, what do you think?
I thought it was great, as you say, the sense of responsibility that the students were given, that they felt that there was something that they were in control of, that perhaps if they're not that happy in a classroom environment, that they have the opportunities to work outside. It's getting the right balance. It's not going to suit all students, but I think if you can give them variety, then that's going to encourage them, to keep on achieving things.
Christine, do you know of schools where they're managing to bring these sort of alternative ideas, maybe a veggie plot, into a school in an inner city, for example?
Yes, there are, and those places where they have put in the effort, but it does need to be something that's taken on really by the whole school. There needs to be someone driving it forward, an enthusiasm there, but it certainly pays dividends for children, perhaps for whom the conventional curriculum doesn't really capture their imagination.
Do you think that pupils in a rural school then, and you come from a semi-rural area, I believe, have an advantage that other pupils wouldn't have? Or do you think you could make the most out of the science of an urban environment?
I think you could, although there are space limitations, obviously. If you're looking at a school that is looking to keep chickens and a vegetable plot, they need to have the space to do that. That's away from residential areas, so there's that kind of aspect. But yes, perhaps the schools that are further out could have an advantage, but then the schools that are further out of major cities would have more of a rural aspect, moving forward with their education anyway.
And what about using the internet? Do you think that could bridge the divide? Bring the different environments home to young people? It's
not the same as doing it, is it? You need to get your hands dirty, I think, really.
I think that's true. They talked about the fresh air, and I think as parents, I certainly felt that it was great to see them being outside, for example. Do you think this will come more into the core curriculum, this kind of practical hands-on experience?
Yes, certainly. The curriculum has been revised, and in fact a new curriculum is being piloted at the moment, which has a much stronger practical element to it, and also has tried to shift the emphasis away perhaps from more pure science to science that might be more obviously relevant for children to their everyday life.
Well, I think we've got an example of that new curriculum in our next clip when we visit Haggerston School, an all-girls school in Hackney, where they are piloting a new GCSE called 21st Century Science. This aims to offer a more inclusive approach to science and is particularly suited to girls.
The students will be taking roles as members of the HFEA. and then they will be assigned 4 different case studies, and as that group of professionals, the students must then decide which one of those cases deserves the treatment more than the other and give reasons. This is part of the sort of the ethical issues that are discussed all the way through the 21st century science. A lot of emphasis is placed on ethics. What we're going to do is go over each case, just give a brief summary, tell me the group decision and why, and then the set of rules that you've come up with.
We chose case number 2, where there's a couple whose son has a non-inherited blood type disorder, and they applied to the HFE, applied to us for tissue typing to find a match for them, and we said no because they don't really need it because it's non-inherited, so they don't need to test for anything.
Girl is of a 4th son, and that we said no to that because parents shouldn't be allowed to choose what sex their baby is, and they should just go through it naturally and be happy with what they get.
Catherine, do you think this more discursive, ethical approach is more suitable for girls than the more practical outdoor one we saw in the previous clip?
Not necessarily. I think there are quite a few girls that would be just as happy outside getting their hands dirty. And I also think that the discussion and the debate is just as relevant for boys, especially, if boys are a bit more reticent. If you can put them into a debating situation, you might draw them out more. But the thing I like about the debate is that it covers all areas, and therefore, although they're practicing it in a science lesson, it actually carries across the rest of the curriculum. And if they get used to debating subjects in all areas, it can only help with their self-esteem and their social skills.
Paul, did you see there's relevance to the science curriculum in that discussion?
Yes, I mean, it's difficult to comment as a parent because we don't really get involved in the niceties of what's on offer at the moment compared to the new course. But making science relevant to today's society is obviously a good thing, and by including things that are newsworthy, it means that they might actually start watching the news and think, oh, we were talking about that, reading newspapers perhaps.
What was the science content in that lesson then, Christine? Was it the ethical dimension or the pure science that lay behind it?
Well, it's both. I think what it's trying to do is to take a very important scientific concept, that of genetics, because they're likely to have studied the processes behind the genetics first, and then looking at what the implications of that are for society. It's really trying to get them to become scientifically literate because of the massive increase in scientific knowledge and decision-making that we have now in society.
Do you think that discussion, Catherine, is relevant to a science lesson as opposed to practical experimentation?
Yes, because a lot of science is, here is a problem, how do we solve it? So you need to have the investigative qualities of pulling things apart and then, getting to the final answer. But I think it's the way that people approach the subject and test out different theories that's a key skill to have as a scientist. So I think discussion and bouncing ideas off each other sounds like a really good way forward.
Paul, when you hear that the curriculum is about to be changed again, and you've already said that you're not really familiar with the current curriculum, does that make you sort of panic slightly and think, how can a parent ever really know what's going on in schools if it's changing all the time?
No, I don't think so. Things should move forward. Things need to change as time moves forward. Of course it does. But I think active involvement by the pupil is key. Whether it's discussion, whether it's practical or whatever it is, they need to be, or at least feel involved in what's being taught, rather than I'll sit here and gather in all this knowledge.
Do you think that it's a subject that lends itself more to continuous assessment rather than exams?